What is up? What is up, YouTube? How y'all doing? Check it out, man. This is a long video. Hey, y'all let me know in the comments. Do y'all like when it's over an hour, right? We do part 1 and part 2. I wondered, I'm asking you guys that's watching these videos, appreciate y'all, man, because we are helping people with this channel, man. I don't trust me, man. Y'all gonna see. Y'all gonna see real soon. Oh my God. You know what, y'all? Let me let y'all in. What Uncle Mike thinking about, man? It's even hard to help people. I had a whole thing set up, man. I'm getting ready to go on vacation. I had this whole thing set up, man. Oh my God. And the whole thing fell through because one person wanted. Oh my God. It's hard, dude. It's hard to even help people. But anyway, I'm sorry. I won't. Let's get back on. Let me know this right here. This story is an hour and a half long, y'all. So is it best to do a part 1 and part 2? We're going to do a part 1 and part 2 because I know I'm going to have to take a break anyway. Or should we just pause it, come back, and just keep going and make it all on one video? Y'all let me know in the comments. Put a 1 in the comment if you want it to be one long video, or 2 in the comment if you want it to be part 1 and part 2. Yeah. Other than that, y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Hey, oh shoot, where my glasses at? Arrogant rookie officer challenged a black judge authority. What happens next stuns everyone. Now, it's funny because I'm colorblind, man. Most of the time, I don't do this racist type stuff, but apparently, it brings views and watch time. And we need views and watch time, people, so we can help people. Amen. And you always doing it. That's why Kevin Hart put that dress on, so he can get more money to help people. Now, he put a lot more of that money in his bank account. Anyway, man, I'm a little twisted over here. Get it twisted. I'm a little twisted. Y'all hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell. Let's check it out.
Justice is blind, but in the Metropolitan Police Department, it had become something far worse. Corrupted, calculated, and cruel. For decades, a hidden network of officers had perfected the art of destroying lives with a badge, training rookies to see threats where none existed. They thought they had the perfect recruit in Officer Savannah Mitchell, young, ambitious, and willing to learn their playbook. Then one Thursday afternoon, she arrested Darnell Washington. She saw what she wanted to see, just another target, another statistic. What she couldn't see was that this single act would land her in front of Judge Marcus Carter, the same judge who had turned his own wrongful imprisonment into a masterclass in exposing police corruption. The man they called the Scale. Because in his courtroom, justice wasn't just blind, it was inevitable. Now, as her carefully constructed world crumbles under the weight of video evidence, Officer Mitchell is about to learn why corrupt officers still whisper his name when cases land on his desk. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed,
where y'all from,
because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. Officer Savannah Mitchell adjusted her freshly pressed uniform in the rearview mirror of her patrol car, admiring how the morning sun glinted off her newly pinned badge. The Metropolitan Police Department parking lot was already filling up for the morning shift, but she'd arrived early, not out of enthusiasm for learning from her seniors, but to show them she was already a step ahead. First day on patrol solo,
little cocky
she muttered
already
to herself, practicing the confident smile she'd perfected through 4 months of field training. Time to show them what real police work looks like. As she strode through the precinct doors, several veteran officers nodded in greeting. Sergeant Thompson, a weathered man with salt and pepper hair and 23 years on the force, stepped away from the coffee machine to intercept her. "Mitchell," he called out, his tone carrying the weight of experience. "Got a minute before briefing." Savannah's smile didn't waver, though internally she fought the urge to roll her eyes. "Of course, Sergeant," she replied, her voice honey-sweet but lined with steel. Thompson gestured to a quiet corner of the break room. "Look, I know you're eager to get out there, but remember what we discussed during training. This isn't River, Creek anymore. The city's different, more complex. Take time to learn the neighborhoods, understand the community." "With all due respect, Sergeant," Savannah cut in, her smile tightening. "I graduated top of my class at the academy. I think I can handle whatever comes my way." The memory of her father's words echoed in her mind. A badge means authority, and authority means respect. Thompson's expression hardened slightly. "That's exactly the attitude I'm worried about. Mitchell, this job isn't about..." The briefing room door opened, and Lieutenant Chen's voice carried through the precinct. "Roll call in 5. "We'll finish this later," Thompson said. But Savannah was already walking away, her boots clicking purposefully against the linoleum floor.
Hey guys, Uncle Mike here with big news. YouTube has changed my life, and now it's your turn. See, Uncle Mike was tired of being broke after every payday. So I decided to do something about it. So I invested over about $9,000 in YouTube courses and online coaching. Man, I was determined to change. But guess what? None of these systems gave me the one-on-one coaching that I needed. So I created my own YouTube course with the help that you need to make sure that you succeed. If you're ready to learn and you're not afraid to put in the work, you too can make a real change. Sign up now and Uncle Mike will send you the 4 videos that got me started. 100% free. Click the word more below and look for our YouTube growth system. That's our course. Now, let's get back to this video.
The briefing room filled quickly with the usual morning chaos. Officers trading, stories from the night shift, rookies comparing notes, and veterans claiming their usual seats. Savannah chose a spot in the front row, pulling out her notebook more for show than necessity. She'd already memorized all the standard protocols and procedures. Lieutenant Chen began the briefing with routine updates. A series of car break-ins in the South District, a warning about a new drug-making rounds in the clubs, and updates on ongoing investigations. Then she paused, her expression growing serious. "One more thing before assignments," Chen announced. "Judge Marcus Carter is presiding over several of our cases this month. Those of you who've been here a while know him. He's fair but extremely thorough. Expects everything by the book. No shortcuts, no assumptions. Make sure your paperwork is pristine." A few veteran officers nodded knowingly. Savannah jotted down the name, though privately she dismissed the warning. Paperwork was paperwork, and a judge was a judge. She'd dealt with plenty of authority figures in her life. As assignments were handed out, Savannah received her patrol route, a mixed residential and commercial area that some officers considered challenging due to its diverse population and complex community dynamics. To her, it was an opportunity to prove herself. The morning passed quickly as Savannah familiarized herself with her beat. She handled a shoplifting call with what she considered appropriate sternness, wrote 3 traffic tickets, and broke up a heated argument between neighbors, before it could escalate. Each interaction reinforced her belief in her own capabilities. It was early afternoon when the call came in. "Possible disturbance at Marshall Street and 4th, the dispatcher's voice crackled through her radio. "Male subject reportedly acting suspiciously near the convenience store." "Copy that," Savannah responded immediately, already turning her patrol car toward the location. Unit 247 responding. The scene she found seemed deceptively ordinary. A young black man in business casual attire standing near the store entrance, checking his phone. Darnell Washington had no idea his life was about to intersect with Savannah's in a way that would change both their futures. Savannah approached with her hand resting casually on her utility belt, her stance broadcasting authority. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the entrance." Darnell looked up from his phone, surprised. "Excuse me?" "We received reports of suspicious activity," Savannah stated, her voice carrying the clipped tones she'd practiced for commanding respect. "What's your business here?" "I'm waiting for my sister," Darnell replied. maintaining his composure despite his growing confusion. "She works at the dental office next door. We're meeting for lunch." Savannah's eyes narrowed. The answer was perfectly reasonable, but something in her bristled at his calm demeanor. In her mind, compliance meant nervous deference. "I'm going to need to see some ID. May I ask why?" Darnell's question was polite but direct. "I'm just standing here." "Sir, are you refusing to comply with a lawful order?" Savannah took a step closer, her hand tightening on her belt. "No, I'm simply asking, hands where I can see them." Savannah's voice rose sharply, drawing the attention of passers-by. Some pulled out their phones, sensing the situation deteriorating. What happened next would be debated in detail during the coming days.
Wow.
Savannah would claim Darnell made a sudden movement.
What?
Video evidence would later show him slowly reaching for his wallet, clearly stating his intentions. But in that moment, Savannah saw what she expected to see, what her preconceptions told her to see. Minutes later, Darnell Washington was in handcuffs, charged with resisting arrest, while bystanders recorded the incident on their phones. His sister emerged from the dental office to find him being placed in the back of a patrol car, her lunch break transformed into a nightmare. Back at the precinct, Savannah filed her report with confident flourishes, crafting a narrative that painted herself as a vigilant officer and Darnell as an uncooperative subject who had escalated a routine interaction. She barely noticed the concerned glances from her colleagues as she described the incident in the break room. "Had to show him how we handle things in the city," she boasted, missing the way Thompson and Chen exchanged worried looks. "Can't let them think they can just ignore an officer's commands." Meanwhile, across town, Darnell's mother, Patricia Washington, sat in the modest office of Marcus Williams, a local defense attorney known for handling civil rights cases. Her hands trembled as she described the phone call she'd received from her daughter. "My son has never been in trouble," Patricia insisted, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "He's an accountant, Mr. Williams. He was just waiting for his sister to go to lunch." Marcus Williams listened intently, his expression growing more concerned as he reviewed the preliminary report and witness statements on his tablet. "The arresting officer is Savannah Mitchell," he noted.
My partner to here busted in. Hey, y'all, there's a lot of stuff to go on behind the scenes, man, that will be interesting if we was recording. My partner's from Pakistan, man, and he logs into the computers, and it's early in the morning. He probably thought I was asleep, so he was going to get up and do some work. Come find out I'm doing work. I'm doing the reaction. So when he came in, we lose sound because the sound goes to him. But anyway, without any further ado, let's keep it going. Here we go.
"My son has never been in trouble," Patricia insisted, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "He's an accountant, Mr. Williams. He was just waiting for his sister to go to lunch." Marcus Williams listened intently, his expression growing more concerned as he reviewed the preliminary report and witness statements on his tablet. "The arresting officer is Savannah Mitchell," he noted. "New to the force, it seems." "Does that help us?" Patricia asked hopefully. "It might," Marcus replied carefully, "especially since this case has been assigned to Judge Carter's court." Across the city in his chambers, Judge Marcus Carter was already reviewing the day's cases when Darnell Washington's file came across his desk. The judge's dark eyes moved methodically over the report, his decades of experience allowing him to spot the subtle inconsistencies, the places where the narrative felt too neat, too practiced. He paused on Officer Mitchell's name, noting it was her first solo arrest. Something about the language in her report caught his attention. The way she emphasized her authority and Darnell's perceived defiance while glossing over the actual sequence of events. "Ms. Carson," he called to his clerk, "please pull Officer Mitchell's training records and any available footage from this incident. I think we need to look at this one carefully." The next morning, as Savannah strutted through the precinct sharing her version of events with anyone who would listen, she remained oblivious to the gathering storm. She dismissed a senior officer's attempted advice about proper escalation procedures and laughed off another's suggestion that she might want to review her body cam footage before the hearing. "Trust me," she said, leaning back in her chair during Lunch break. Once Judge Carter sees how I handled that situation, he'll understand. We can't let people think they can just question our authority whenever they feel like it. Mitchell, Sergeant Thompson tried one last time. Judge Carter isn't... I know. She waved him off. He's thorough. He's fair. He expects everything. By the book. But at the end of the day, he'll understand that I'm just doing my job, keeping the streets safe. As she spoke those words, Judge Carter was settling into his chambers, preparing for what would become one of the most significant cases of his career. On his desk lay 2 files, Darnell Washington's spotless record and Officer Savannah Mitchell's incident report. Between them sat a USB drive containing multiple angles of video footage that told a very different story than the one Savannah had written. The judge thought back to his own youth, to moments when authority had been wielded as a weapon rather than a responsibility. He pulled out his legal pad and began making notes, preparing for a hearing that would test not just one rookie officer's arrogance, but the very foundations of justice and accountability in his courtroom.
Here we go,
The stage
y'all.
was set. In 48 hours, Officer Savannah Mitchell would stand in Judge Carter's courtroom, armed with nothing but her misplaced confidence and a fabricated narrative. She had no way of knowing that her first solo arrest would become a turning point, not just in her career, but in the ongoing national conversation about power, prejudice, and the true meaning of justice. As the sun set over the city, 3 people prepared for the coming storm in very different ways. Darnell Washington sat in his mother's living room, surrounded by family, trying to maintain his faith in a system that had already failed him once. Judge Carter worked late into the night, carefully reviewing precedents and procedures, knowing that what was coming would require all of his experience and wisdom. And Savannah Mitchell went home to her apartment, polishing her badge and rehearsing her testimony, completely unaware that her world was about to change forever. The hearing was set for Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp, in Judge Marcus Carter's courtroom. Justice was about to wear a face that Officer Savannah Mitchell never expected to see. Monday morning arrived with a weight of expectation hanging in the air. The courthouse steps were already busy with the usual morning crowd when Officer Savannah Mitchell climbed them 2 at a time, her boots clicking against the worn marble. She'd spent extra time on her appearance, uniform pressed to military precision, badge polished to a mirror shine, blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun without a single strand out of place. Several of her colleagues from the precinct were already gathered in the hallway outside courtroom 4B. Sergeant Thompson stood apart from the group, his expression grim as he watched Savannah approach. "Mitchell," he called out quietly. "A word?" Savannah checked her watch, still 20 minutes before the hearing. "Sure, Sarge, but make it quick. I want to review my notes one more time." Thompson led her to a quiet alcove. "Last chance to amend your report, if there's anything you want." To clarify, seriously? Savannah cut him off with a laugh that echoed too loudly in the marble hallway. "I appreciate the concern, but my report is perfect. Everything happened exactly as I wrote it." "Even with the video evidence?" "Videos don't show everything," Savannah replied, her tone dismissive. "Judge Carter will understand that we have to make split-second decisions in the field. Besides, I heard he's tough but fair."
That's crazy, man. When you focus, knowing you wrong, but I got all these people behind me. When you focus and you can't nobody tell you nothing, man. Can't nobody tell you nothing. And that's good at sometimes when you're doing right and when you're helping people. You look for him. Do right when you're helping people. But when you focus on doing wrong and it's wrong. Wrong is wrong. And you know good and well you did wrong. That guy didn't do nothing. Oh my God, here we go, y'all. Here we go.
Thompson's weathered face tightened. "You're not listening."
You're not listening.
The heavy courtroom doors opened and a bailiff emerged. "All parties in Washington versus the city. Judge Carter's court is now in session." Savannah straightened her shoulders and flashed Thompson a confident smile. "Watch and learn, Sarge." Inside, the courtroom was filling quickly. Darnell Washington sat at the defense table with his attorney, Marcus Williams. His family occupied the first row behind him, his mother Patricia, sister Michelle, and several other relatives. They were dressed formally, their faces composed, but tense. Savannah strode to the prosecution's table where the city's attorney, James Morton, waited. He was reviewing a thick file, his forehead creased with concern. "Officer Mitchell," he murmured as she sat down, "I need to know if there's anything in these videos that might contradict your report. Anything at all." "Mr. Morton," Savannah replied, her voice carrying a hint of condescension, "I assure you, all rise." The bailiff's voice cut through the murmured conversations. The Honorable Judge Marcus Carter presiding. Judge Carter entered with measured steps, his black robe flowing around him. He was tall, with close-cropped gray hair and dark skin that showed its age in distinguished lines around his eyes and mouth. Those eyes, sharp and observant, swept across the courtroom as he took his seat. "Be seated," he said, his voice deep and clear. "We're here today regarding the matter of Washington versus the city, concerning an arrest made by Officer Savannah Mitchell on Thursday afternoon. Mr. Williams, you may proceed with your motion." Marcus Williams stood, straightening his tie. "Your Honor, we move to dismiss all charges against Mr. Washington and request an immediate investigation into Officer Mitchell's conduct during this arrest. We have video evidence from multiple sources showing that my client was fully compliant, and that Officer Mitchell escalated the situation without cause." "Objection!" Savannah blurted out, half rising from her chair. Judge Carter's gaze fixed on her. "Officer Mitchell in my courtroom. Objections come from the attorneys, not the witnesses." "Mr. Morton?" The city attorney placed a restraining hand on Savannah's arm. "No objection, Your Honor. However, we maintain that the videos don't show the complete context of the interaction." "We'll examine that context thoroughly," Judge Carter replied. "Mr. Williams, present your evidence." Williams nodded to his assistant, who dimmed the lights. A large screen descended from the ceiling, and the first video began to play. It was from a bystander's phone, showing Darnell standing quietly by the store entrance, checking his phone. Savannah's approach was visible, her body language aggressive from the start. "As you can see, Your Honor," Williams narrated, "Mr. Washington was simply waiting for his sister, causing no disturbance, when Officer Mitchell approached him without probable cause." "That's not—" Savannah started to interrupt again. "Officer Mitchell," Judge Carter's voice carried a note of warning, "interrupt these proceedings one more time without being addressed, and I will hold you in contempt. Is that clear?" Savannah's face flushed. "Yes, Your Honor," she managed, though her jaw remained tight. The video continued, showing the escalation exactly as it had happened. Darnell's calm questions, Savannah's increasingly aggressive responses, the moment when she claimed. He made a threatening movement. "Now," Williams said, "let's compare this to Officer Mitchell's body cam footage." The second video started, and Savannah felt her confidence waver for the first time. The angle was different, but the story it told was the same. Worse, her own. Voice sounded different than she remembered. Harder, more confrontational. "Note the timestamp, Your Honor," Williams continued. "Officer Mitchell claims in her report that Mr. Washington exhibited suspicious behavior for several minutes before she approached. The video shows she initiated contact within seconds of arriving." Morton shifted uncomfortably beside Savannah. "Your Honor, while the timing may be slightly off, we maintain that Officer Mitchell had reasonable suspicion based on the call she received." "About that call," Williams interjected. "We've subpoenaed the dispatch records. The complaint came from a payphone, and when investigators tried to follow up, they found no one in the area who had actually witnessed any suspicious behavior. We believe Officer Mitchell either fabricated the call or responded to a deliberately false report without proper verification." Savannah's face grew hot. She hadn't expected them to trace the call. The truth was, she'd seen Darnell from her patrol car and decided he looked out of place. The dispatch call in her report was an afterthought, a detail added to justify her actions.
Whoa, what?
Judge Carter leaned forward.
Whoa, what?
"Mr. Morton, does the city wish to respond to this allegation?" Morton tugged at his collar. "We need time to verify the dispatch records, Your Honor." "Very well. Judge Carter made a note on his pad. Mr. Williams, continue. The morning proceeded like a slow-motion nightmare for Savannah. Williams methodically dismantled her report, pointing out discrepancies between her written statement and the video evidence. More witnesses came forward. The store owner who testified that Darnell was a regular customer, Michelle Washington's supervisor confirming their lunch plans, even a passing jogger who'd recorded part of the interaction on her phone. During a brief recess, Morton pulled Savannah aside. "This is bad," he whispered. "You told me you had probable cause. You told me the videos would support your story." "They're just twisting things," Savannah insisted, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence.
Yeah.
"That's what defense attorneys do, right?" Morton stared at her for a long moment. "Officer Mitchell, I'm going to recommend the city settle this case, and if I were you, I'd start thinking very carefully about what you're going to say when Judge Carter calls you to testify." "I'm not lying," Savannah snapped.
Ain't
But
nobody
the
said you
words
was
tasted
loud.
bitter in her mouth. When court resumed, Judge Carter called Darnell to the stand. Savannah watched as he testified, her perception of him shifting uncomfortably. In her report, she'd painted him as aggressive, non-compliant. But the man on the stand was articulate and composed, his account of events matching perfectly with the video evidence. "Mr. Washington," Williams asked, "had you had any previous interactions with law enforcement?" "No, sir," Darnell replied. "I've never been arrested or even received a traffic ticket. I'm an accountant. I was just waiting for my sister like I do every Thursday." "And how has this incident affected you?" Darnell's composure cracked slightly. I used to believe that if you did everything right, followed the rules, respected authority, you'd be okay. Now, I'm nervous every time I see a patrol car. I had to explain to my nieces why their uncle was in handcuffs. How do you explain something like that to children?" From her seat, Savannah heard Patricia Washington stifle a sob. For the first time since the arrest, doubt crept into her mind. She glanced at Judge Carter and found him watching her, his expression unreadable. "Officer Mitchell," Judge Carter's voice cut through her thoughts. "Please take the stand." As Savannah walked to the witness box, she tried to recapture her earlier confidence. She'd practiced her testimony, prepared her answers, but under the harsh fluorescent lights, with Judge Carter's penetrating gaze fixed on her, those practiced words felt hollow. "Officer Mitchell," Williams began his cross-examination. "Please explain why you felt Mr. Washington's behavior was suspicious enough to warrant investigation." Savannah swallowed hard. "The call stated, the call we've established came from an empty payphone," Williams interrupted. "Let's focus on what you actually observed." "He was standing near the store entrance," Savannah said, her voice smaller than usual. "It's a high-crime area." "Objection," Williams cut in. "The crime statistics for that neighborhood show it's one of the safest in the city. Would you like me to enter those statistics into evidence?" "Sustained," Judge Carter said. "Officer Mitchell, please stick to your direct observations." The questioning continued, each of Savannah's answers sounding weaker than the last. Williams methodically exposed every inconsistency, every assumption, every moment where her prejudices had colored her actions. "One final question," Williams said. "In your report, you claimed Mr. Washington made a sudden threatening movement. Yet, in none of the videos, not the bystander footage, not your body cam, not the store security camera, does any such movement appear. How do you explain this? Discrepancy?" Savannah felt sweat beading on her forehead. The courtroom was silent, waiting for her answer. She looked at Darnell, at his family, at Judge Carter. The weight of truth pressed down on her. I thought he was going to..." She trailed off, unable to finish the lie. "You thought?" Judge Carter's voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the courtroom. "Officer Mitchell, in your report..."
Unable to finish the lie, he says. Unable to finish the lie.
Sir. She looked at Darnell, at his family, at Judge Carter. The weight of truth pressed down on her. I thought he was going to..." She trailed off, unable to finish the lie.
Unable to
You
finish
thought?
the lie.
Judge Carter's voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the courtroom. Officer Mitchell, in your report you stated with certainty. There was no thought or believed. You wrote it as fact. Are you now saying you were mistaken? Savannah's voice cracked. I may have misinterpreted. May have? Judge. Carter's tone sharpened. Officer Mitchell, you are under oath. Did Mr. Washington make a threatening movement or did you lie in your report? The silence stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, barely audible, Savannah whispered, No, sir. He didn't move like that. I'm sorry, Judge Carter said. I don't believe everyone heard you. Please speak up. Savannah's face burned with shame. No, Your Honor. Mr. Washington did not make a threatening movement. I wrote what I thought would justify the arrest. The admission hung in the air like smoke. From the gallery, Savannah heard someone gasp. She couldn't bear to look at Thompson or her other colleagues. Judge Carter's voice cut through the silence. Given this admission, we'll adjourn for today. Mr. Morton, I expect the city's motion to dismiss all charges against Mr. Washington on my desk within the hour. Additionally, I'm ordering a full investigation into Officer Mitchell's conduct, both in this incident and any previous arrests she's made. He turned his full attention to Savannah, who seemed to shrink under his gaze. Officer Mitchell, remain in my chambers. We need to discuss the consequences of perjuring yourself in my courtroom. As the gallery began to clear, Savannah remained rooted to the witness stand. Her carefully constructed world of authority and control had crumbled, leaving her to face the truth about herself and her actions. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Judge Carter's final words before he retired to his chambers. This court will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9. Officer Mitchell, I suggest you spend the intervening time reflecting on the true meaning of the oath you took to protect and serve. This isn't River Creek anymore, and I'm not a judge who will turn a blind eye to abuse of power, regardless of who wields that power or what badge they wear. The morning after Savannah's devastating testimony, the courthouse hallways buzzed with whispered conversations. Legal aides hurried past with stacks of files, and reporters clustered near the building's entrance, hoping to catch anyone involved in what they'd started calling the Mitchell case. Inside Judge Carter's chambers, the morning sun slanted through Venetian blinds, casting striped shadows across his desk. He sat reviewing the latest evidence submissions, his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. A gentle knock at the door interrupted his concentration. Come in, he called, not looking up from the documents. His clerk, Sarah Chen, entered with a fresh stack of papers. Sir, the investigation team sent over Officer Mitchell's complete record from River Creek Police Department. Judge Carter accepted the file, noting its suspicious thinness. This is everything? That's what's strange, Your Honor, Sarah replied. According to the cover letter, several files were marked as misplaced during a recent system upgrade. Convenient timing, Judge Carter murmured, making a note in his legal pad. What about the body cam footage from her training period? Technical difficulties, apparently. Most of it's corrupted. Judge Carter removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. Get me Judge Henderson from River Creek on the phone. I want to know if these technical issues affected any other officers' records. Meanwhile, in a small conference room down the hall, Marcus Williams sat with Darnell and his family, preparing for the day's testimony. The defense attorney spread several photographs across the table, snapshots from security cameras showing Darnell's regular Thursday visits to see his sister. These establish your pattern, Williams explained. Every Thursday for the past year, same time, same place. Officer Mitchell couldn't have had any legitimate reason to consider your presence suspicious. Darnell nodded, but his attention was on another document, Mitchell's incident report. She wrote that I was lurking suspiciously and behaving erratically, he read aloud, his voice tight with controlled anger.
Wow.
Who was she seeing when she looked at me? Because it wasn't me. Patricia reached for her son's hand. Baby, some people see what they want to see. That's exactly what we're going to prove today, Williams said. pulling out another file. "We've got testimony from 6 other people Officer Mitchell arrested during her training period. All of them tell similar stories." Across town at the Metropolitan Police Department, Sergeant Thompson sat in Lieutenant Chen's office, both of them reviewing Mitchell's training evaluations. The atmosphere was tense, heavy with the weight of missed warning signs. "Here," Thompson said, pointing to a note he'd made 3 weeks into Mitchell's training. "Showed concerning bias in subject interactions. Recommended additional diversity training." Chen frowned. "What was the response?" "Got overruled. Her test scores were too good, and we were short-staffed." Thompson's face showed the burden of that compromise. "We should have pushed harder." "Don't start that," Chen warned. "We're not here to shoulder Mitchell's guilt. We just need to make sure we catch everything now." Back in the courtroom, people filed in slowly, the morning's tension palpable. Savannah sat at the prosecution table, her uniform still pristine, but her posture markedly different from the previous day. Gone was the swagger, replaced by a rigid stillness that spoke of sleepless nights and uncomfortable revelations. Judge Carter entered, and the bailiff called the court to order. "Be seated," the judge said, his voice carrying its usual measured authority. "Mr. Williams, you may call your next witness." The defense calls Officer Peter Rodriguez. Savannah's head snapped up as her former training partner walked to the witness stand. Rodriguez avoided her gaze as he was sworn in. "Officer Rodriguez," Williams began, "you worked with Officer Mitchell during her field training, correct?"
Yep.
"Yes, sir, for approximately 6 weeks. During that time, did you observe any concerning behavior in her interactions with civilians?"
Yes.
Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. "I noted several instances where Officer Mitchell seemed to approach situations with preconceived notions." "Could you be more specific?" "There was one case." Rodriguez glanced at Savannah before continuing. "We responded to a noise complaint in the Garden District. Before we even got out of the car, Mitchell had decided it was probably gang-related because of the neighborhood demographics. Turned out to be a kid's birthday party." Williams nodded. "Did you report these concerns?" "I included them in my
report.
Training evaluations?" "Yes." "And what happened?" "The evaluations were modified before final submission. I was told we needed to focus on her technical proficiency, not subjective concerns." The questioning continued, painting a picture of systematic oversight and ignored warning signs. Rodriguez's testimony was followed by 2 other training officers, each adding pieces to the puzzle of how Savannah's biases had been allowed to flourish unchecked. During a brief recess, City Attorney Morton approached the defense table. "Mr. Williams, a word?" They stepped into a quiet corner, where Morton spoke in low tones. "The city is prepared to offer a settlement. Full dismissal of charges, written apology, compensation for Mr. Washington, and immediate termination of Officer Mitchell's employment." Williams' expression remained neutral. "And the broader investigation Judge Carter ordered?" "That's complicated. The department is willing to implement additional training." "No deal." Williams cut him off. "This isn't just about Darnell anymore. You heard the testimony. How many other lives has she affected? How many reports has she falsified? The system that enabled her needs to be exposed." When court resumed, the prosecution called their expert witness, Dr. Angela Martinez, a specialist in law enforcement training and behavioral psychology. She'd reviewed all available evidence, including Savannah's background and training records. "Unsigned, my professional opinion," Dr. Martinez testified. "Officer Mitchell's behavior shows a clear pattern of confirmation bias and authority complex, likely stemming from her background and reinforced by inadequate oversight during training." "Could you elaborate?" Morton asked, trying to salvage something from the testimony. "Officer Mitchell appears to have entered law enforcement with a rigid worldview about authority and compliance. Rather than having these assumptions challenged and corrected during training, they were effectively reinforced by a system that prioritized technical proficiency over emotional intelligence and community engagement." Judge Carter leaned forward. "Dr. Martinez, in your review of Officer Mitchell's records, did you find any evidence that these issues were identified and addressed during her training?" "Yes, Your Honor. but only at the initial observation level. Several training officers noted concerns, but these notes were consistently minimized or dismissed in final evaluations. The afternoon brought more damaging testimony. A parking attendant from near the convenience store testified about regularly seeing Darnell waiting for his sister. The store owner provided months of security footage showing the same Thursday pattern. Each witness added another crack to Savannah's already crumbling narrative. Finally, Williams called his last witness of the day, Michelle Washington, Darnell's sister. "Ms. Washington," Williams began, "please tell us about your Thursday lunches with your brother." Michelle's voice was steady but emotional. "We started having lunch together after our father passed away last year. Dad always said family needs to stay connected, so every Thursday, Darnell would wait for me outside my work, and we'd go to lunch. Sometimes we'd just talk about our week, sometimes about Dad. It was our way of keeping his memory alive. And on the day of the incident, I was running a few minutes late because of a patient emergency. I tried to text Darnell, but by the time I got outside," Michelle paused, composing herself. "By the time I got outside, he was already in handcuffs. I tried to explain to Officer Mitchell that he was my brother, that we did this every week, but she wouldn't listen. She just kept saying he was resisting arrest, but he wasn't. He wasn't doing anything wrong." The courtroom was silent as Michelle described watching her brother being placed in the patrol car, the helplessness she felt, the frantic call to their mother. Savannah stared at her hands, unable to look up as Michelle's testimony continued. "Did this incident affect your Thursday lunches?" Williams asked. We haven't been able to do them since," Michelle admitted, tears finally spilling over. "Darnell won't come to that area anymore. We tried once last week, but he had a panic attack just parking his car. Officer Mitchell didn't just arrest my brother that day. She took something precious from our family." As Michelle stepped down from the witness stand, Judge Carter called for the day's final witness, Detective Sarah Martinez from Internal Affairs. "Detective," Judge Carter addressed her directly, "what has your investigation revealed about Officer Mitchell's prior arrests?" "Your Honor, we've
Man, I'm sorry, man. Can you imagine a police officer did some ugly stuff? Just like Boys in the Hood when they pulled the Cuban Jr. over and threw him against the wall. And these are good kids. They going off to college and stuff. These not gangbangers. And you just assume, yeah, I'm doing my job. These are ugly police officers, black or white. This ain't got nothing to do with race. Not right now. But my thing is this. You don't know what in the world. They can't have lunches anymore. The uncles and the nieces and the nephews, everybody looking at, you ain't looking at it like that. Everybody looking at him like he's the bad guy because the police had to put him in cuffs. That's what the world think. This person in cuffs, he's the bad guy. The police officers, good people. That's what the kids think, because that's what they study in school. Man, I feel like I'm about to have a heart attack over here, man. This is making me so mad.
Identified 13 arrests during her training period that show patterns similar to Mr. Washington's case. In each instance, the initial cause for contact was questionable, and the situation escalated primarily due to Officer Mitchell's approach and attitude. And the body cam footage from these incidents? Most of it is unavailable, sir, either not properly uploaded or corrupted in the system. However, we've located civilian recordings of 3 incidents that directly contradict Officer Mitchell's written reports. Judge Carter's expression darkened. And who was responsible for maintaining these records? That's where it gets complicated, Your Honor. The chain of custody shows multiple handlers, unclear protocols, and a pattern of technical glitches that seem to affect certain officers' footage more than others. The implications of systemic issues hung heavy in the air. Judge Carter made several notes before addressing the courtroom. "We'll adjourn for today. Tomorrow morning, I want to hear from the department's records supervisor and IT manager. Detective Martinez, please ensure they have full documentation ready regarding these technical issues and chain of custody protocols." As people began filing out, Savannah remained seated, the weight of the day's revelations visible in her posture. Her confident facade had crumbled entirely, replaced by a growing understanding of the damage she'd caused. Judge Carter watched her for a moment before speaking. "Officer Mitchell," she looked up, startled. "I expect you back here tomorrow morning. There are still questions you need to answer."
Word.
"Yes, Your Honor," she whispered. In the gathering dusk outside the courthouse, 3 conversations took place simultaneously. In his chambers, Judge Carter spoke quietly with his clerk about subpoenaing records from River Creek. In the parking lot, Darnell hugged his sister, both of them finally allowing themselves to hope for justice. And in a dimly lit stairwell, Sergeant Thompson found Savannah sitting alone, her head in her hands. "Mitchell," he said softly. She looked up, her eyes red. I never meant." "I know," Thompson replied, sitting beside her. "But meaning to hurt people and hurting them anyway. Sometimes that's worse. Because it means you didn't even think enough about them to consider how your actions would affect their lives." The truth of his words settled over her like a heavy blanket. In the growing darkness, Officer Savannah Mitchell began to understand that the real measure of authority wasn't in how much power you could wield, but in how carefully you wielded it. Dawn broke over the city courthouse, painting the stone facade in shades of amber. Inside his chambers, Judge Marcus Carter sat reviewing a stack of newly acquired documents, his morning coffee growing cold beside him. Each page seemed to add another layer to what had started as a simple case of police misconduct. Knock at his door preceded Sarah Chen's entrance. "Your Honor, the files you requested from River Creek arrived overnight." Carter accepted the thick manila envelope, noting the expedited delivery stamp. "Judge Henderson came through." "Yes, sir." She also included a personal note. Sarah handed over a sealed letter. Carter read it quickly, his expression darkening. "She says there's been pressure to restrict access to certain records. Interesting timing." He placed the letter in his desk drawer. "What about the IT manager's report? Mr. Phillips is waiting outside with Detective Martinez. They found something you need to see." The judge nodded. "Send them in." James Phillips, the department's IT manager, entered alongside Detective Martinez. Phillips was a nervous man in his 50s, clutching a laptop to his chest like a shield. Detective Martinez's calm presence seemed to steady him as they took their seats. "Mr. Phillips," Carter began, "I understand you've discovered some irregularities in the department's digital records." Phillips glanced at Martinez before speaking. "Yes, Your Honor. After your order to investigate the missing footage, I did a deep dive into our storage systems. The corrupted files weren't random glitches." "Explain." Phillips opened his laptop, turning it to show a complex series of logs. Someone accessed these files using administrative credentials. The corruption wasn't a malfunction. It was deliberate. They used a program designed to corrupt specific video segments while leaving the metadata intact.
That's crazy.
Can you determine who accessed the files? That's where it gets complicated. Phillips scrolled through the logs. The credentials belong to Captain Robert Drake, but the access patterns don't match his normal usage. Someone else was using his login. Carter's eyes narrowed. "And where is Captain Drake now?" "On administrative leave," Martinez answered. "Has been for 3 months, officially for stress-related health issues." "Convenient," Carter murmured. "Mr. Phillips, how far back do these corrupted files go?" "At least 18 months, Your Honor, and it's not just Officer Mitchell's footage. We've identified similar patterns with several other officers, all of whom had multiple civilian complaints filed against them." The implications hung heavy in the air. Carter made several notes before looking up. "Detective Martinez, I want a full list of every officer whose footage was affected. Mr. Phillips, prepare a detailed report on the technical aspects of this tampering. We'll need both for today's hearing." As they left, Sarah Chen returned with another update. "Sir, there's a reporter from the City Times asking for comment. The story about evidence tampering has leaked." Carter sighed. "Tell them no comment until after today's proceedings. And Sarah, make sure we have extra security in the courtroom." Across town, in a modest diner far from the courthouse, Sergeant Thompson sat across from Lieutenant Chen, both nursing cups of coffee that had long gone cold. How deep do you think this goes? Chen asked quietly. Thompson glanced around the nearly empty diner. Remember last year when Internal Affairs tried to implement that new body camera review protocol? Chen nodded. It got shut down. Budget concerns, they said. Budget had nothing to do with it. They were afraid of what they'd find. Thompson pulled out his phone, showing Chen a series of emails. I've been keeping records, Lisa. Every time I reported concerns about an officer, every complaint that got buried, every technical issue with the footage. Why didn't you come forward sooner? And report it to whom? The same people who were burying the evidence? Thompson's voice carried years of frustration. But now, with Judge Carter involved, Chen studied her old friend's face. You're going to testify. Someone has to. Mitchell isn't the disease. She's a symptom. Back at the courthouse, the morning session began with an unusual tension in the air. The gallery was packed, with several journalists among the spectators. Savannah sat at the prosecution table, looking smaller than ever in her uniform. Judge Carter entered, his expression grave. Before we proceed, I want to address some new developments in this case. Mr. Williams, Mr. Morton, approach the bench. As the attorneys came forward, Carter spoke in low tones. Gentlemen, given the evidence of systematic tampering with police records, I'm expanding the scope of this hearing. Mr. Morton, I understand this puts the city in a difficult position. Morton tugged at his collar. Your Honor, my instructions, from the City Council, need to be reassessed in light of this new evidence. Carter cut him off. I'm giving you 1 hour to consult with your superiors. This is no longer just about Officer Mitchell. When the attorneys returned to their tables, Carter addressed the courtroom. Detective Martinez, please take the stand. Martinez was sworn in, her professional demeanor a stark contrast to the nervous energy filling the room. Detective, Carter began, please share your findings regarding the department's handling of digital evidence. Martinez outlined the technical details Phillips had discovered, explaining how the selective corruption of footage had created blind spots in oversight. As she spoke, Savannah seemed to shrink further into herself, realizing she'd been a small piece in a much larger puzzle. And what about Officer Mitchell's cases specifically? Carter asked. We've reviewed all 13 cases previously identified, Martinez replied. In each instance where footage was corrupted, we found civilian recordings that contradicted the official reports. Additionally, we've discovered 27 more cases with similar patterns during her training period. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Savannah's head snapped up, shock evident on her face. She hadn't known about many of these cases, incidents her training officers had handled while she watched, learning their methods. Your Honor, Williams stood. Given this new evidence, the defense moves to add several witnesses to our list. Individuals from these newly discovered cases. Granted, Carter replied. Mr. Morton? The city attorney looked uncomfortable. Your Honor, the city requests a brief recess to... Denied, Carter cut him off. Detective Martinez, please continue. As Martinez detailed the pattern of misconduct, a larger picture emerged. It wasn't just about one rookie officer's prejudices. It was about a system that had cultivated and protected those prejudices. During the lunch recess, Savannah found herself alone in a courthouse bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. The door opened, and she looked up to see Michelle Washington's reflection in the mirror. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Then Michelle broke the silence. Did you know? Savannah turned, water dripping from her chin. Know what? About the others, the other people whose lives you and your colleagues ruined. Did you know? Savannah's voice was barely a whisper. No. I mean, I knew some things weren't right, but I thought... She trailed off, realizing how hollow any explanation would sound. Michelle's voice was steady but filled with controlled emotion. You know what the worst part is? Every Thursday, I look out my office window at lunchtime. Every single Thursday. And every time, I expect to see my brother standing there, checking his phone, waiting to hear about my day. But he's not there. And he might never be there again. She turned to leave, then paused. Officer Mitchell, whatever happens in that courtroom, I hope you remember that moment when you decided my brother didn't deserve to be treated like a human being, because we'll never forget it. When court resumed, Sergeant Thompson took the stand. His testimony laid bare years of ignored warnings and buried complaints. It wasn't just Officer Mitchell, he explained. The department had an unofficial policy. Certain officers were protected. Their body cam footage would conveniently malfunction. Civilian complaints would get lost in the system, and anyone who raised concerns was quietly pressured to back off. "And why are you coming forward now?" Williams asked. Thompson's eyes found Savannah's. "Because sometimes you have to decide what kind of cop you want to be, one who upholds the law or one who hides behind it." As the afternoon wore on, more witnesses came forward. A parade of civilians shared stories eerily similar to Darnell's. Routine encounters that escalated because of officer prejudice, reports that misrepresented events, complaints that disappeared into the bureaucratic void. Judge Carter listened to each testimony, occasionally glancing at Savannah, watching as the weight of revelation settled on her shoulders. She'd entered his courtroom believing she was defending her authority. Now she was witnessing the collapse of everything she'd been taught to believe about that authority. Late in the afternoon, an unexpected witness appeared. Captain Robert Drake himself, accompanied by his attorney. "Captain Drake," Carter addressed him. "I understand you've reached an agreement with the district attorney's office." "Yes, Your Honor." Drake's voice was tired but resolute. "In exchange for immunity, I'm prepared to testify about the department's handling of misconduct complaints and digital evidence." What followed was a devastating account of systematic corruption. Drake detailed how certain officers were selected for protection, how evidence was manipulated, and how whistleblowers were silenced. "Officer Mitchell," he said at one point, "was exactly the kind of rookie we looked for. Ambitious, authority-oriented, and willing to follow the unwritten rules. We paired her with training officers who would reinforce those tendencies." "And the missing records from River Creek?" Carter prompted. "We had contacts there. When we learned about this hearing, we reached out, asked them to minimize certain aspects of her record." As Drake's testimony continued, Savannah felt the last pieces of her worldview crumbling. Every certainty she'd held about her role, her authority, her place in the system, all of it was built on a foundation of corruption and prejudice. Judge Carter called for a brief recess before the day's final witness. In the hallway, Darnell Washington stood with his family, listening to their attorney explain the broadening implications of the case. "This isn't just about your arrest anymore," Williams told them. "Judge Carter's going to use this case to force a complete overhaul of the department's oversight systems." "And Officer Mitchell?" Patricia Washington asked. Williams glanced toward where Savannah sat alone on a bench, staring at nothing.
That's
"She's a small
brainwashed.
piece of a bigger problem."
That's brainwashed or gaslight. I don't understand the difference between brainwashing somebody and gaslighting a person. But think about it, man. All you need is a little bit. This is what I believe. I got the power to jump in there and make a difference. And I'm a slightly racist, or, we the good guys, they the bad guys because they're in a bad neighborhood. So all we need is a little bit of that, and then we'll exploit it. We'll show you the tactics and everything that they use. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. What do you think? Why is this the bad guy? Why is this the good guy? And you make them proud of this, the choices they made, especially if the choices is about assuming somebody is right or good or bad without no proof. Yeah, man. So she was targeted, so to speak.
Patricia Washington asked. Williams glanced toward where Savannah sat alone on a bench, staring at nothing. "She's a small piece of a bigger problem, but sometimes it takes a small piece to bring down the whole structure." When court resumed, Judge Carter addressed the packed gallery. Given today's revelations, this hearing will be expanded into a full investigation of departmental practices. Mr. Morton, I understand the City Council has requested time to prepare a formal response. Yes, Your Honor. They're prepared to announce a complete review of all affected cases and implement new oversight procedures. That's not enough, Carter replied firmly. I'm appointing a special master to oversee this investigation. Every case involving corrupted evidence will be reviewed. Every officer named in Captain Drake's testimony will be investigated, and every victim of this systemic abuse will have their day in court. He turned to where Savannah sat, looking lost, in her now wrinkled uniform.
Wrinkled.
Officer Mitchell, while you are not solely responsible for this institutional failure, you are not absolved of your actions.
Wow. Now, first and it's funny how they telling the story. She was all pressed up and, cause she a police officer. Yeah. She, now she realized she done did wrong. Not only did she realize she did wrong, now she realized that the whole department is about to throw her under the bus because they trained her how to be wrong. It's like, damn, that's messed up. Now she realizing, you understand, now you're going to become a human being. Yeah, you're going to become a human being and all this stuff. Hey, look here. I'm going to get on up out of here, man. This is going to be part 1 right here. We're going to do part 2. Y'all let me know in the comments. Do y'all prefer to have these, put a 1 in the comment if you like everything 1 on, 1 long video. Our machines can't handle it, but we can make them handle it. Or put a 2 if you like a part 1 and a part 2, man. It brings more views. It brings another completely different video to the channel. So each video gives us 2 videos. So anyway, but I think that we might get more watch time if it's all on 1. So y'all let me know. I don't know. We just asking y'all. We try to get y'all involved and help growing the channel as well. And we appreciate y'all. Look here. After that, I'm gonna get on up out of here. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.